Today, one of our own, Linda Kay, is going to be speaking to us about anti-racism. Linda grew up in a largely white Westfield and Scotch Plains. Her parents operated from inherited biases, discouraged her from mingling with other races. This pattern of separation continued throughout her life. In 2020, the murder of George Floyd and the turmoil that followed was a wake-up call. She began learning about the situation of Black people in the United States and in New Jersey. She joined an anti-racism support group for white people, took a course on racial healing with Dr. Amanda Kemp. She became a pen pal to an incarcerated UU through the Church of the Larger Fellowship and followed the criminal justice reform work of the UU Faith Action New Jersey group. She used her background in research and training to pass on what she was learning to UUOCC. Her chalk talks were, what is bias? White responsiveness, alternatives to incarceration, reparations, the proposed AIDS principle, and letters from an incarcerated UU. She also facilitated 2 discussion groups on the book White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo. She treasures the support of UUOCC and its members for this important work. Welcome.
I did the trainer's favorite, belt and suspenders approach. I have a slideshow, and I also have printed the slides so that if the show doesn't go, I still have hope. So, abolition, maybe you've heard this word being used now. Most of you know that abolition of slavery happened in 1865 with the 13th Amendment. And the 13th Amendment said that slavery was abolished except for punishment for a crime. And that's the catch.
Loophole.
That has caused a lot of trouble since then. So this is a great big topic, and because of that, I've just done a little bit on each of the aspects of it, and I've left a whole bunch out. Here are some of the things we're going to cover. I'll do some introductions. I have 2 experts that are helping me today. We'll talk about what abolition is, a definition. We'll talk about what's a crime and what causes it. We're going to look a little bit at maternal and infant health in New Jersey because that's where the problems begin. Seems like a long way from an incarceration when you think about a little baby, but it's not that long. We're going to see a little film clip. It's 2 minutes called Bias Starts Early. We're going to talk some about policing, about mental health and addictions, about the bail system, something about juvenile justice in New Jersey, some stuff about incarceration, and debt corps in New Jersey, which is the state use industries aspect of prison life in New Jersey. People always want to know, well, what about serious crimes? You abolish all this stuff. What do we do about that? Talk a little bit about post-incarceration, and then my 2 experts will sum up. I'm a little dry. Let me get my water bottle. That's better. Okay, so I am aided by 2 experts. The first is Olayemi Olerin, who sometimes goes by Olerinati or Ole. She was raised in the Bahamas and she moved to the States in 2008. She has a BA in political science from Ohio State, a JD from St. John's University. And she was a public defender for a number of years. She's a podcaster, political commentator, and an abolitionist thinker. She is smart. And she is mad, okay? The other is our own UU Reverend Dr. Michael Tino. His MDiv was in 1998. He did some campus ministry, various volunteer roles around the UU world, and is currently co-leading the ministry of the Church of the Larger Fellowship, which has a major emphasis on serving UUs who are incarcerated. He has a husband and a daughter at home. So I virtually didn't actually talk to them, asked them, what is abolition? And Ole had this to say, it is a vision for the future. Dollars divested from police, courts, prisons, and the criminalization of the most disenfranchised, and money put into the root causes of crime. We need to design a new system that actually stops crime and addresses harm. And this has never been done, so it would be something brand new. Michael says, a world that doesn't need prisons anymore. We need to imagine it in order to work toward it. He quoted Marianne Kaba say, food, shelter, education, health, art, beauty, clean water, all that is foundational to personal and community safety. So let's hear what they say about what is a crime. Ole says that 80% of arrests nationwide are for misdemeanors, low-level and non-violent offenses. But the horrific crimes get the media attention, and condemning violence doesn't stop it, but removing the causes of violence does. Michael says it depends. The definition of a crime depends on how we define it. Wage theft by employers who don't pay their workers what they're worth is not considered a crime. A lot of things we consider crimes don't hurt anyone. And many in prison never did the things they were accused of. What causes crime? Ole says poverty, unemployment, poor housing, starved schools, and starved mental health systems. Michael says economic despair. We need a world where nobody has to worry about being sick with no money for the doctor and can't miss work, or running out of money at the end of the month to feed their children. We're going to start with maternal health care in New Jersey. I should mention that New Jersey has some of the largest disparities in the country between black folks and white folks on a lot of different measures. And this is a place where it really shows up. The mortality rate for black mothers in New Jersey is 7 times that of whites. Ooh. Blacks have more prenatal and postnatal complications because their initial health situation often has underlying conditions that aren't addressed. And the mortality rate for black infants in their first year is 3 times that of whites. Now, there is hope. Some legislation was passed, and a maternal and infant health innovation center is being put together in Trenton. It will use Capital Health System, which is a large hospital system up there. They will provide pre- and postnatal care and supportive services. Rutgers University will take care of accreditation of nurses and doulas, and will do job training, and will do research. The Trenton Health Team has a record of coordinating health and social services in that area. And so those three partners will be working together. They're going to break ground next year. I may or may not need help on this next slide. Bias starts early. Oh, good. This is a YouTube, and we are hoping that I can get it.
It's a new study at the Yale Child Study Center. I had to read a few times just to believe what it was telling me. Researchers recruited about 135 preschool teachers. They had to watch video footage of 4 kids playing: a black boy, a black girl, a white boy, a white girl. And they told the teachers, their subjects, watch the video, there may be some challenging behaviors. As soon as you see something that could become challenging, hit the enter key. Here's the trick. There was no challenging behavior. The researchers were using eye scan technology to see which child the teachers were looking at most. What they found is that the teachers, both white and black alike, spent the most time watching the black boy, waiting for bad behavior to recede. There's one more really interesting headline in the study, which comes later. The teachers were also given a 1-paragraph description to read a hypothetical child, stereotypical name, who behaves pretty badly in class, pushes, scratches, throws toys. And some of the teachers were also given some biographical information that helped make sense of that behavior. They were told that the child lives with his mother, a father has been in and out for years, they're relatively poor, the mother is depressed, works 2 jobs. Researchers wanted to know if knowing this information made the teachers more empathetic. Well, here's the shock. It did, but only if the teacher and the child were the same race. If the teacher and the child, a white teacher and a black child, or even a black teacher and a white child, knowing that biographical information, those teachers were less empathetic towards those students. Here's why this matters. Imagine, if this is true, if there's this empathy deficit in preschool, well, imagine where else it's true.
There we go. Okay, here's takeaways from the video. These teachers, white and black, they were watching their eyes, where their eyes were looking the most, and they watched the black boy the most, looking for bad behavior. This preschoolers. Okay, some of the teachers were given a description of a child that pushes, scratches, and throws toys. And then they were given some biographical information about a single mom, low income, that she's depressed and works 3 jobs. And was there empathy? Only if the teacher and child were the same race. If they were different races, the teacher was less empathetic, knowing that information. This is how bias works. It's unconscious, and it is something we swim in. I'm going to move along. We've lost some time here. Policing. There's lots we could say about policing in this country, right? But here are just a few of the thoughts that came to me. The militarization of police. After the Gulf War, there was all this excess military tanks and AK-47s, and they were offered free to police departments. And the law and order people were like, yeah, we need to defend our communities. And so we have in some neighborhoods tanks rolling down the street. This is just not good. Over-policing of black and brown communities, which they have complained about. Excessive use of force. The police presence in schools endangers black and brown students. Why? Preschool. Right on over. And the blue wall that protects errant officers from accountability. So here are some things that could change. having the communities be in control, having officers come from the communities they serve, and or providing culturally sensitive training, transparency and accountability, and a national registry of problem officers. Because they often, when they're fired from one jurisdiction, they move, they land somewhere else. Yeah. Mental health and addiction. Right now, very often it's the police who are called for mental health crises, domestic violence disputes, which, by the way, they hate to do, and addiction crises in communities. And there's a lack of access to treatment. We could have, and some places are having this, mental health and domestic violence crises handled by trained professionals, not the police, or they accompany the police. And they go in first and they do mediation and they talk the person down. Addiction recognized as a disease, not a moral failing. Narcan, that's starting to be available more freely to people who need it, to families who have a family member who needs it. Counseling, addiction treatment facilities widely available. Bail. Bail is a monetary amount that is supposed to guarantee that the defendant will appear in court. So they pay bail, they get out of jail, this is the way it's supposed to work, and then when they appear for their court, they're reimbursed for the bail that they paid. Well, for many defendants who don't have much money, their choice is to stay in jail, lose their job, lose their house, etc., or get bail from a bail bond company, which is a profit-making company, for which they pay a hefty fee and high interest. In New Jersey, in 2017, we enacted bail reform. We made a move from cash bail to a judge's risk assessment based on factors like prior convictions, age, seriousness of charges, and then people said, oh, well, you're going to let somebody loose and they're going to go murder again. But there was a study done by the Law and Policy Institute, and they said that bail reform had no effect on crime rates. Juvenile justice. In New Jersey, black juveniles are 21 times more likely to be sentenced to incarceration than white juveniles for the same crimes. There are 3 huge facilities that were built in the 1850s. It's on a punitive model, and there's limited treatment options in these facilities. So in 2017, there was a campaign, 150 years is enough. And that was, they were able to get 2 of the facilities closed, the one in Jamesburg and the Hayes unit. Now the Bordentown unit in 1865, when the Civil War ended, Bordentown, black educators raised a school where black people could go to get educated. So it was like an HBCU, but it was high school age, teaching people to read and write and to do math and do those kinds of things. There is talk of returning it to that original use, of being like a center for learning. And 2 years ago, a pilot project was run called the Restorative Transformative Justice Hubs. These are facilities in 4 major cities. They work to prevent court involvement, and they support people post-incarceration. So there's a whole wraparound of social services and education and job training and all the things that you would need to, addiction treatment, to move things away from the court system and back into the community. Incarceration is big business. $11 billion in free labor is provided in the United States. Inmates owe $28 billion in fines and fees. Their families spend $3 billion a year for commissary necessities like deodorant, menstrual pads, it's basic, a piece of candy. And families spend $15 billion a year in moving, eviction, and homelessness caused by the incarceration of their wage earner. So, solutions: get private enterprise out of the prison business. Make prison phone calls free. The reason this is important is in order for me to stay in touch with my family while I'm incarcerated, right now I have to spend part of my pay to call my house. They have to accept, or they have to accept the charges, and I have a 15-minute limit for each call. These calls, the telecommunications for prison systems is different from AT&T or the ones that we use. There are two major companies in the United States that provide it. And so say I have a wife and 2 kids and a couple of parents. How do I stay connected with them? How do they even know, who I am? It's really a tough thing. And solitary confinement. In New Jersey, we passed a law in 2019 called the Isolated Confinement Restriction Act, which now needs more oversight than it's getting. Was abolished by law, but there hasn't been the follow-up and accountability. Solitary confinement only hurts people, it does not help. It just warehouses people, that the prison systems, and they're understaffed and all that kind of stuff because they're all run by multinational companies who are skating by with the best bottom line they can. And ending life sentences for older incarcerated individuals. A lot of them are of no danger, they have health problems, they really need to be back in the community. So yesterday I discovered some information about New Jersey prisons and the prison industries that we have here in New Jersey. It was called the Bureau of State Use Industries. Now it's called DebtCorp. So you might see the little DebtCorp chumps going around delivering stuff to things. This was formally established in 1918. It provides employment to people experiencing incarceration. It's thought that they gain skills and can earn some money. They're not idle. They get good habits, work habits, and take pride in what they do, and hopefully learn some useful skills that they can use when they are released. And state and local agencies are the only places that are eligible to get goods, but they get them at a steep discount. So everybody's like, well, this is a win-win. My municipal office gets, envelopes or stickers or street signs, from state use industries. We don't have to pay much for them. Okay, let's see what it costs and who pays. The wages for most jobs, I was so dumb. I searched for hourly wages for prison employees. There are no hourly wages. It's $1.60 to $3 per day. The higher skilled jobs, you might make up to $7.50 a day. The pay scale has not been updated since the 1990s. 10% of that pay goes into their funds toward when they're released. Up to 40% of it goes into restitutions and fees that they are supposed to pay. They also need to get from that child support, some of their medications, commissary items, and phone calls. So this is definitely a place where we need some work to happen. So what about serious crime? Olay makes the point, what are we doing about rape now? Less than 25% are reported. Only 4% of those lead to arrest. Less than 1% go to prosecutors. And there are 200,000 untested rape kits that nobody has paid any attention to. We could change that, but it would require some push from the people who are out here and are affected. Michael said, what if we as a society decided that no one was disposable? That no one deserves to be in chains? We might need new ways to separate a few people, but it wouldn't look like prison. Whoops, back. So, post-incarceration, the person comes out of prison, yay! Broken community bonds, they have a record, they can't vote, they can't apply for many jobs. They even have trouble getting housing because landlords will want to know whether you have a criminal record, and their addictions and mental health concerns may have gone untreated. So what we need on the other side is family reunification services, because basically this is like someone coming back from combat. They have PTSD. They have forgotten how to live in a community that is the outside. In restorative justice, we address the harm that they caused and they make amends. This doesn't necessarily mean meeting the person they harmed. Sometimes these are mediated and they do meet, but an arrangement will be made either for community service or some kind of restitution for the harm that was done. Then the record needs to be expunged, especially for those 80% that were low-level crimes. Why are we carrying these? We need their voting rights returned because people invest in their community and in their society when they're able to have a voice. And no checkbox on any application. Have you ever been convicted? And adequate treatment during incarceration and during the transition. And now we have some final thoughts. Here from Olay. We all want to live in a society that is free of crime and the social ills that reproduce it, but continuing to invest in policing and mass incarceration of communities whose well-being we've never invested in only takes us further and further away from that goal. There are other countries that don't invest in punitive prison systems and instead invest in genuinely care-based, community-based rehabilitative models. Understanding this helped me notice that I'd thought of a world with prisons as natural. And from Michael, a few big things. Understand root causes of crime and commit to eliminating them. Abundant and accessible treatment for mental health and addiction problems. As soon as they start struggling, no stigma. Change the public policy of sin and punishment. People who have inherent dignity and worth, who have harmed others, are deserving of being brought back into relationship with their communities. So this is just like we do in a congregation where we take a covenant to treat each other well, and when one of us is out of covenant, then we figure out a way to bring that person back. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing.
Yeah, really. Just stand there.
It's afraid of you. Oh, I better do it.
It's coming. It's the boots.
Okay, any questions or comments? I know that was a lot, and it's heavy. I'm sorry.
I don't understand the big, what it means, 200,000 untested rape kits. That confuses me. I don't know what that means.
They're in police departments. They're backed up. The people who are supposed to test them, there's no push to get them tested. There's no, if the person decides not to prosecute, why would we bother testing them? We don't care about the next person that's going to get, violated. It stinks. Any other questions? Yes.
I heard that, I think it was on NPR News, that they are trying to implement the free phone calls for inmates program. So it has been being discussed recently, so I did hear that. It was interesting that you had that up there. So hopefully they'll.
There are a few states that are enacting it, and what happens is they're better connected to their family.
Yeah.
So when they're released, it's an easier transition.
That's important.
Are any of the jails still, I know a lot of them, well, I don't know if all of them are privately owned, but they run like county jail, Wilshire County Jail, jail.
It depends on whether the county government decided to privatize it to save money,
Yeah,
or whether they want to,
so they're not all gone. Yeah.
Oh, no.
Some are.
There are jails in every county.
Somebody's making a lot of money on it. Private.
Yeah, that could happen.
Prisons that they're putting people in, who they consider,
Yeah, usually jails are for pre-conviction, whereas people are being held awaiting trial. If they haven't been able to get out on bail or on this new model under a risk assessment. And then prisons are, once people are convicted.
just to follow up.
Yeah.
The prisons that they're putting people who they consider, and I didn't want to say the word illegal, okay, those are all private.
Yeah.
They're all money makers or something.
Yeah.
All of them, all of them. There's no exceptions to that.
Because and they're federal prisons, right? Mostly.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's ICE is a federal agency. I saw Peggy first, and then Sam.
I just wanted to mention that UU Faith Action has a criminal justice task force, and some of the things you're mentioning are some of the legislation that they're working on, including one right now for incarcerated elderly people.
Yay.
And then I also wanted to mention that the New Jersey Tree Foundation, which you may have heard me speak of before, has a program for formerly incarcerated people. It's called Green Streets, and they learn how to do landscaping and drive big trucks and do all sorts of tree work. And it's been going for 20 years, and all the people on that crew are formerly incarcerated.
Wow, that's wonderful. Sandy.
Yeah, I think another thing to keep in mind is that we have to invest in pre-incarceration environmental factors. And one of the things that we kind of lose sight of is that young males are in crisis in this country, and they're being left behind. The role of fathers in families and in these young males' lives. role of male teachers as role models. We tend to look at these situations when you're in jail as opposed to,
Too late.
yeah, and, why is this young boy getting the attention? Well, maybe because there's a lot of energy. Boys tend to have more energy when they're young. Girls tend to be a little bit more intellectual or verbal. And so boys act out more physically. So understanding the needs of young males is very important.
Mm-hmm.
Males are in crisis, young males are in crisis in this country. And they need these services because otherwise they're just kind of running around without role models, without guardrails in terms of what is right and what is wrong.
Mm-hmm. I've even read some stuff about, UU church services and how hard it is for boys and young men to sit through a 45-minute service, and that you have to have a different kind of worship if you're going to involve and, and engage with young men. Oh, Irene, sorry.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. A question comes to mind, which is, and I don't expect necessarily you would have the answer, is whether or not jails in communities could institute some of these changes so that were mentioned in your talk, or do they have to answer to like a federal system or a bigger system? I just wondered how much leeway they would have in maybe making those changes, and then that could be done on a community level.
Yeah, I guess it just depends on the jurisdiction.
Yeah.
I know of a man who was involved with drugs and eventually was selling drugs, and he sold some drugs to a federal agent and therefore went into the federal correctional system. And his first placement, he's from New Jersey, his first placement was in Alabama because that's where there was a bed open. What is his family supposed to do with that? Even when he was moved to Philadelphia, that was still a tremendous strain. So, yeah.
And, it comes back, it's so unequal, and it comes back to if it's a child, who your parents are. Like, I know personally of a college kid who was arrested for drugs. His father got him, and a lawyer that was friends with the judge.
Mm-hmm.
And he skipped the whole line of other people, and the judge was schmoozing with the lawyer and said, no record, no nothing.
Yeah, well, yeah. And public defenders, God bless them, but their caseloads are tremendous, and sometimes they don't even get to meet their defendant before they're supposed to do something about this, and it's not, that's another place to work. Yes, Barry?
Yeah, I think we've all heard the expression, defund the police.
Right.
And to me, what that means is that anytime they go out and there's even the slightest criteria of a mental health situation, a social worker needs to go out. And I think I spoke a number of weeks ago about the woman up in New Brunswick, 68-year-old grandmother, who was having a mental health situation. They came knocking at her door at 5 a.m. in the morning. Okay. And she said she had a knife, whatever. They broke her door down, they tased her, and they shot her in the back. It was a 68-year-old grandmother. She had grandchildren. That really needs to be addressed. And so far in the state, we haven't heard a word about what's going on with that.
Okay. I love the questions, but it's 11:45, and so I'm going to turn the program over to Barb.
So thank you.